Hey friends, Adam here. Welcome to part 5 of my cue ball control series. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a playlist link above. We started out with the stop shot, the follow shot, the draw shot. We went into tangent lines, we went into cheating the pocket, and part 4, we went into stun. And the whole time I was kind of teasing side spin and not really talking about it. I did show a shot at the end of part 4 using side spin. Today we're going to get into it. Now, side spin is a giant topic. There have been books and studies and thousands and millions of hours at the table studying it and working on it and perfecting it. We're not going to get into that depth in this course. We are going to kind of go over the basics of it, some shots, some ways to practice it, and it's going to be an overview, and it's going to help with cue ball control. Now, one of the reasons why I waited for side spin is because in order to control the cue ball, you have to know where it's going, and you have to know the natural paths of where it's going. That's why I spent 4 parts with only doing 1 shot with side spin, and that was at the end of part 4. You have to know where the cue ball's natural angles are going, because side spin is going to change those natural paths, whether it's inside or outside or upside down. No, that's not it. But that's one thing I wanted to make clear, kind of nail home the point that this is going to change the natural path of the cue ball. Now, I've talked about this in the past. I will do a video on this at some point in my life. I see a lot of comments on videos, whether it's a pro or an amateur run out video, whatever, saying, please tell me what side spin you're putting on to make the ball. They want the little cue ball on the table with the red dot. And actually, I'll put a link to the short that I did on why a little bit of why it doesn't help. The problem with that is that, one, you don't know the stroke that they're using. You don't know exactly where on the cue ball they're hitting, because 1/2 a millimeter to the left or right can change everything completely. The other one, you do not use side spin to make a ball. I'll let that sink in just a second. Now, before you jump into the comments and blast me on it, everything that I say on these videos and everything that everyone says about pool has its caveats and its exceptions. But for the most part, you are not using English side spin, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. You are not using English to make a ball. You are using English to control where the cue ball goes. Now, obviously there's exceptions. You may have to spin around a ball in order to make a ball. You may have to, if you have a shot like this and you're here and you're trying to cut the ball over there, you're almost never going to be able to do this without some kind of inside English. Maybe we'll get to that shot, probably not. But for a large, vast majority of all cases, you are using English to move the cue ball into the direction you want it to, and not to make the ball. And that's why knowing where the cue ball's natural angles are is so important. Let me give you an example. If I have this shot, which is straight in, I don't need any English to maneuver the cue ball. Especially, let's say this is, I don't have a 9 ball. Let's say we're playing the game 7 ball, because that's the 7 ball. I just play a stop shot and it goes in. However, if my cue ball is here, the natural tangent line is probably going to take it here and towards the side pocket. So I may need to play side spin to widen the angle out or narrow it, depending on the shot, so that I don't scratch. So if I put some outside spin on this and just hit it smoothly, I get nowhere near the side pocket. In fact, I'm closer to the corner pocket than I am the side. So we're going to get into some shot examples here, but I want to talk a little bit about deflection, and this is what kills everybody with side spin. Now, I'm not going to get into it like a Dr. Dave. Dr. Dave has an entire video series on deflection and side spin, and terms deflection, squirt. What that means, when you hit a cue ball in the center, it just goes forward. When you hit it on the right or left side, if I hit the cue ball on the right side, the cue ball is going to go left first. And then it's actually going to do one of these where it kind of curves over. Let me show you head on. And I'll do a shot example here in a second. But when I hit it on the cue ball on the right side, the cue ball is going to naturally start this way and then come back to its intended path. And depending on where that line and where it happens and how hard you hit it and how much spin you put on it, what your tip position is, that's going to, and I shouldn't say can, that's going to change your aiming point on the ball. So let's do an example here. Get a nice shiny pool ball here. Hopefully this is sitting right. Now, if this is very, very close to center table. I didn't use a level or anything. I just kind of eyeballed it. If I hit this straight on with no English and hit the ball perfectly, it's just going to hit the 9 straight in. Cue ball's going to come straight back. If I aim right at the 9, or right at the middle of the stripe, which is a little off, and I put right English on it, watch what happens with the cue ball, and I will slow this down in post, kind of show you the angle of what happens. So I am aiming straight at the 9 ball. I'm using right English and I'm hitting it kind of firm. You should have seen it curve. Now, the shaft you use is going to have a huge impact on this shot. I am using a Predator Revo, which is probably the lowest deflection shaft in production right now. Low deflection means it's not going to squirt out as much. In fact, let me grab this. Let me grab this cue and see what kind of damage we can do with this thing. This is a cue from the mid-90s with a 100% maple shaft. Has a lot of flex to it. We'll try doing the same shot here. We'll see how much more deflection it has. Again, I'm aiming right for the middle of this stripe. And you saw I hit probably half a ball because that squirt threw that ball over. So let's set up a real quick shot to talk about the aiming. So let's say I have this shot. Normal aiming line using your ghost ball aiming system, which I've talked about a little bit on this channel, not going to get really into aiming in this series, is going to be just straight through the center of the pocket, through the ball. If I am using left spin, which is kind of a natural come out this way, I'm going to have to change my aim because the cue ball is going to go to the right more. So when I'm aiming with left, I'm actually aiming a little higher or to the left than normal. If I'm aiming with right, the cue ball is going to fly out this way and I need to aim more towards that side. So if I'm aiming this with right English, it looks right now that I'm aiming and I'm going to hit it right about there. But with the way the deflection works, or squirt, you can call it either one, and there are technically differences, we won't go into that. That's what happens to that shot. So, deflection, it's going to screw up your aim. If you are a player who has not used side spin yet, good luck. The recommended way to learn is to learn without using any side spin first to get your aiming and get your fundamentals and your stroke and all that kind of stuff figured out, and then add side spin in. And that point is one of the most frustrating for pool players. And the harder you hit it, the more deflection. The softer you hit it, the more spin, usually. Let's get into some example shots, and I'll show you kind of what English does to a ball into the natural path. All right, I have set up a shot here. The one ball is about, object ball is basically 2 diamonds up, 1 diamond out. The cue ball is lined up pretty straight with it as far as up and down the table. I'm avoiding a natural scratch angle, which you would know by my tangent line video. I'm going to shoot this just with straight top and kind of pay attention to where the ball goes. And maybe I'll put lines on the table or points on the rail or something like that. So that is the natural path of the cue ball. Now, I do want to say, with one caveat here, is that when you cut a ball, you're naturally putting side spin on the object, or on the cue ball when it hits the object ball. So I'm hitting it straight, but as soon as it hits this at a cut, it throws it, and that's the thing I talked about before, not like throwing a ball, but it throws it and adds side spin to the cue ball. And that's why knowing the natural path of the cue ball is very important, because with side spin, you're manipulating it. Now, I'm going to play this with outside spin, which is right spin. And I'm going to say this again, this is with a caveat. There's always exceptions, but a majority of the time, a big portion of the time, when you're using side spin, you're also using it with some top or some bottom. There are cases where you're using just straight left or straight right in a middle ball, right along the horizon there. But a lot of the times you're going to be using a top or bottom ball along with that side spin to manipulate the cue ball. This one I'm going to play with upper right. It's going to be 1 to 2 o'clock on the cue ball if you want the little red dot. And watch what it does to the natural path of the cue ball. Now again, I have to aim this differently because it's of the deflection. So you'll probably notice it hit the rail about the same spot over here. And it all depends, where it hits the rail is going to depend on how I hit it in the pocket. If I hit it center pocket, it should be the same every time. If I ended up cheating the pocket a little bit, it'll end up being, but then the angle cut off and went further inside here. It kind of opens up the angle off the first rail, which causes it to close off the second rail, if that makes any sense. Now I'm going to do the opposite, where I'm going to do upper left, and this is going to be like 10 to 11 on the cue ball, and watch what happens with the cue ball here. Again, it hit the same spot, but now it came way out here, and now the path is coming out here. Being able to master this shot, and eventually in parts, so I don't know what part it's going to be, I will have I'm not going to call it a drill, I'll call it an exercise of using this to manipulate the cue ball. So I'm going to move this object ball a little bit closer, leave the cue ball in the same spot. This is like 1.5 diamonds-ish. And I'm going to show what you can do with manipulating less top, less of a rolling ball and more of a forced ball or a stun shot. Now first, I'm just going to play this with straight right, and even though I said most shots have top or bottom on them, it's going to have some top because it's just a regular rolling ball. But I'm not playing any top on the cue ball. And you saw it even cut it off more because the top doesn't extend that tangent line. And then you probably guessed what I'm going to do here. Play just a little bit of bottom. So now this is going to be more 4 o'clock-ish on the cue ball. And this is going to affect the tangent line because there's bottom on it. It's going to come in deeper into the corner and then spin out. Now, knowing all that, you can really, really manipulate the cue ball. I recommend setting up dots like this and just trying all the various things. You could even do something similar to that like wagon wheel drill that we did in one of the other parts, where you just set up a shot like this and then put balls along the rail and try to hit the ball coming out. Now, I'll get into more inside spin and all that kind of stuff in future videos. I just kind of wanted to go over some basic shots and kind of focus more on outside spin in this video. Let's look at another shot here. All right, let's take a look at this shot. I'm on the 9 here. Let's just say this completely made up game of 9 ball, and I'm on the 9. I left myself this. I see a lot of people try to bank it back here because they think they can't cut it. And it is an extreme cut. I mean, it is, but it does go, and you can kind of, this is kind of a throw shot with extreme right spin. Now I'm going to play just right on the cue ball. Not going to play any top or bottom. And I'm going to aim for the extreme edge of the ball. And if we're talking ghost ball, I'm looking to hit it there. If it was frozen. to get there is difficult. Now there's something called, I don't want to really get into this, there's something called cut, induce, spin, which means if I try to cut this just naturally with no side spin, it's probably going to go here. It's just you're never going to get that much cut on it. You could, in supremely slick conditions, brand new balls, brand new cloth, that might work. But for the most part, you need to spin this in. So enough talking. Let's try to make this one. And you see how soft I hit it. Kind of just threw the ball in. Let's take a look at one more shot for this video. All right, let's get back to this shot just real quick. I wanted to talk about one term that you'll hear players use, and I'll probably use it. In fact, I'm going to use it in a shot coming up. The term's running English. And then the opposite of that is reverse English, or kill English, or there's a number of different terms. But running English means you're running the cue ball to in the natural path that's intended. So if I'm going to play right spin on this, which is outside English in this case, it's going to run the natural path of the cue ball, or with the natural path of the cue ball. I'm manipulating it with outside, but it's still moving in the path of the cue ball. Like the cue ball is already going this way, and my English is just helping it along. That is the term running English. Now, along with that, there is reverse English, which is inside English, or like kill English. I've heard it used. I call it a number of things, and that's the inside, and we saw this before. I didn't make it, but I'm basically reversing the angle and forcing the cue ball to do something that it's not meant to do. All right, let's take a look at this one last shot and we'll call it a video. All right, let's say we're playing a completely made up game of 8-ball here and we have this shot. This 12 ball is very, very, very straight. There is a slight angle that I could use, but it is very, very straight. So how do we make the 8-ball? I think the natural answer for a lot of people is going to be, we'll just stop the cue ball there and bank the 8-ball. All right, now what are you going to do? Bank it 2 rails, bank it down here. I mean, there's a number of other things you can do, but those are very, very low probability shots. What I would like to be able to do is get the cue ball over here to play the 8 in that corner. Now, some people will say, well, you can just kind of pop the cue ball over and then play the 8 down here. All right, I'm ruining that plan too. There, now what are you going to do? The answer is you want to use some running English. Now in this case, we just talked about running being outside. In this specific case, the running English is going to be the natural path of the cue ball, which is going to be kind of up and around that way. But in order to get that, because I'm on this side of the ball instead of this side, it needs to be inside English. I'll get into that a little bit more in the next video when I talk exclusively inside. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play upper right, which is going to be 1 o'clock on the cue ball maybe. I'm also going to try to cheat the pocket to hit it more to this side so I can get the cue ball to bounce more off this rail. And the plan is to have the cue ball go 1, 2, and up toward, kind of towards the 2 ball almost. Now the side pocket is in play over here with the scratch, kind of the natural path 2 rails is towards that, so I want to force that out. So we'll see if I can pull this one off. I'd say that's a pretty good leave for the 8-ball. Now, for those of you who were wondering, is it hard to, are you hampered bridging over the 2-ball? Well, since it's the video and it's completely made up, we don't even have to. In fact, since the video is completely made up, I don't even have to make the 8-ball. So I really don't have any exercises or drills. I don't want to call them drills. Exercises for just this specific part. What I'm going to do is when I get inside and outside and a lot of the different angles, I'll have more of that, similar to the the drill that we did, or the exercise lesson, that's a good word for it, with the wagon wheel, where I had kind of balls on the angle here, or on the diamonds here, and trying to, you know, make the one ball and run into, say, the 15. Like that. And then do the same thing and try to run into the 5. Do the same thing and try to run into in between. I'll get to that after I've gone through all the spin, because there I didn't use the standard, one of the ones that we talked about in this video. But I think for this video, that should do it. This has been part 5. Part 6, we're going to talk more inside English. There's a lot of different shots you can use with inside that really, really manipulate the cue ball. Think of outside as running English and inside as reverse English, except for a few exceptions. There are a few exceptions, like the one I showed you, where inside English is actually the running English. We'll get to that in the next video. Meantime, let me know what you think of this series. Let me know if you have any questions specifically on this part, and hopefully I can get to them in future parts and do the whole YouTube like, subscribe, and everything. Hoping this series kind of takes off. It really hasn't so far, but I know there's a few people that have really thanked me for doing this. So until next time, we'll see you later.